a white light.
I'd rather just go back to where we was at.
That's what makes sure you're able to record it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're recording now.
Okay. Yeah, no, I want to put it on so I can share him the link because our audio person just want to make sure that we're good with recording. And then we're going to change these lights and then we'll be good to go. Yeah, leave them white. Leave them white.
White would be good.
Whole production crew here. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay.
We got the glare. It's cool. We'll make it. It's fine. It's fine. All right. We can get the. You texting me already?
Uh-huh.
All right, we're good. All right. So we about to start our session, you guys. You hear me, Dan? Yep. All right, you guys ready?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got it. I don't think I'm ready. I'm ready.
So, I mean, we're not reading bios. They're going to introduce themselves.
Yeah. So
okay.
we're gonna have you guys introduce yourself. To the, we're gonna try to make it as seem live as possible. You guys been doing it. Y'all know the deal. All right. All right. Let me get in my zone. Get in my zone. All right, you guys. We are here with some revolutionary educators at our activation panel. You ready for this?
I'm ready.
Hey, listen. These revolutionary educators, we know that we'll mess up trying to introduce all the accolades that they have had. So we're going to let them just go around and introduce themselves and welcome to the Revolutionary Educator Conference. So Todd, how about you start off? Introduce yourself.
I guess I'll kick it off. So I'm Todd Nesloni. I have been a teacher, a principal, and now I serve as the Director of Culture and Strategic Leadership at the Texas Elementary Principal Association.
Awesome. Adam, go ahead.
What's up, everyone? My name is Adam DeVico, and I'm a career educator, teacher, principal, curriculum facilitator, college professor, author, a little bit of everything, but pleasure to be here. Currently, I'm in North Carolina at a elementary public school serving in a curriculum role.
Awesome.
Dope. And listen, this guy, he's just everywhere. Hey, he's taking the throne for TikToks, man. I just gotta say, go ahead, Daniel.
Thanks to everybody. I'm Daniel Patterson. I am the Director of Education for an alternative high school, a therapeutic high school in West LA. I've taught English, was a varsity tennis coach, high school assistant principal before that for the last 17 years.
Awesome.
Dope.
So this panel is amazing. We have people from everywhere per usual. So it provides a lot of good insight that we're about to receive this afternoon. So we're gonna kick it off with the first question. Rahh, you got it?
Yeah, so listen, y'all know it's all about revolutionary, right? So I just want to go around and ask you guys, what makes you a revolutionary educator, right? During this time, we know we need immediate impact for our young people. Mm-hmm. So what makes you a revolutionary educator, and what makes your practice something that makes an immediate positive impact on your school culture and your school community?
Who's kicking it off? Daniel.
Anyone can jump in on that.
What's that? You want me to go?
Yeah, let's let Mr. TikTok go first.
I see how it is. I have the pleasure of working at a school that balances, or it's very congruent between mental health and academics. So I think in this season with the pandemic and such political polarization and everything that we have going on, student mental health and teacher mental health has been at crisis levels. So what makes me revolutionary in that capacity is my ability to deliver tangible resources to those stakeholders, students, parents, families, teachers, so that we can be healthy and learning at the same time.
Yes.
Man,
I'll go next. When I think about revolutionary, I think about continually looking at doing things better. And it doesn't always mean completely reinventing the wheel every time. Sometimes it just means doing little shifts. And I think one thing that everybody listening can associate with during the times of this pandemic is that we have all had to change the way we think about things, the conversations we have, the way we have those conversations. I mean, everything has had to be redone. And for the association that I work for, and with all the schools that we represent, I mean, even we've had to readjust the way, I mean, look at this conference. This would typically have been an in-person thing, but figuring out how to gather all these people from all over to bring quality content that people want to listen to and learn from. I mean, even that is being revolutionary in a way. And so I think it's all in how you look at it, because even a teacher who has always only done worksheets and is now completely changing the way they do things because they have no other choice, they're being their own version of revolutionary. So it's all about just making sure you're moving forward with that change.
And for me, revolutionary means looking at things that haven't been done and finding ways to make them happen. And like Daniel and Todd both said, wherever your role is right now in this current time, you are having to look at things differently. And so for me personally, being at a new school this year, is my first year at this school, I'm having to look at, where is the school right now? And one of the big things that I've focused on is equity, making sure that we are doing work that is addressing the needs and the deficits that our students have felt over the past year in the pandemic, but also the historical things as well. So we're really pushing a lot of new thinking with anti-racism and equity work at my school. So for me, that's a big thing with being revolutionary.
No, absolutely. And I think we just got Justine in here. Justine, we are in the middle of talking about, we're gonna let you introduce yourself as well. But introduce yourself and also let us know what makes you a revolutionary educator.
All right, let's do it. So I'm Justine Lucas, the proud principal of an amazing school in Corona, Queens, from New York. And I'm super passionate about education. I'm radical about everything that I do for children and for teachers and with my team. And honestly, revolutionary educator to me is realizing it's not about me. It's about tapping in to everybody around me. So me going into administration is to unleash the potential of not only the children, but of each teacher and each para and a school aide and my agents and my nurses and my food and nutrition team, because I can't be everywhere. And that was always so hard for me as a teacher. I couldn't get to everyone, and I would see problems and I would go to people and they'd be like, no, it's not possible. And I'm like, no, tell me yes. Do it. Yeah, it takes a lot of capacity building. It takes a lot of sustainability. It takes thinking outside the box. It takes tapping into everyone. So to me, that's revolutionary because it just shifts your small impact, even though it's large and it's totally game changing. But as far as you could reach that is really the power. And that's why I just love everything that you guys do and just being connected with Adam, Todd, Daniel, and you in Egypt and the panel. It's awesome. That's the game change to me. Awesome.
That's so good. Thank you all for sharing that. So when a lot of terms that were dropped in the conversation, we heard like anti-racism, making a shift change, and just knowing that you want to reach out to everyone. So when it comes to race, what do you think how it plays out? Race, class, or privilege? How does that play out in a school setting? And how, as you in a leadership capacity, might have navigated through that?
You can jump in, Adam.
Oh, anyone can jump in. Go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, and I got to figure out that I'm on mute. So let's try that again there. The new trend of 2020. Word of the past year, you're on mute. So for me, our system, and by system I mean our schools, our society is built on privilege, and unfortunately, too many white people have benefited not only from that systemic racism that is built into the fabric of our society, but refuse to look at that privilege that has been unwarranted as something that defines where many of us are. So often we look at the the meritocracy of thinking that I worked hard, I deserve to be here, while not looking at the realities of my whiteness has allowed me into so many doors, has allowed me into so many conversations, and has opened up so many pathways that teachers and people of color have not been able to. And so meritocracy has been a big focus for me and for me as a school leader in the discussions that we have. And it's a hard discussion because it's hard to accept that your hard work may not be the reason you are where you are.
That's some powerful stuff, Adam. And I want to swing it over to Daniel and Justine for what you said and how you said it, right? That is where the work is at, right? That acknowledgement, that awareness. And I think that's the point of this collective healing. So I just want to echo that. I think that was powerful. Daniel, you want to add on to that?
Yeah, I mean, from a mental health perspective, which is, my primary passion is mental health, and we look at access to services and the disparity. And if you look at any sort of racial data on access to quality care or care at all, students of color really are suffering greatly. When you have statistics like only 4% of any therapists in the United States are Black, right? So how do you justify that? And how do you serve a culture and a community without like the shared lived experience, without having to having your client or your student labor to burden to then unpack what it's like just to be them before you can even get going on the work? So I think that is really, for me, a touchstone that I'd like to create a fund. And I'm working on building a fund that's just free therapy for students that anybody can access. They can, right now we've raised about $100,000, and any student and any counselor can request 10 free sessions, and we just write a check and they do it. Because, so for me, I guess that's like using my privilege and not ignoring it, but also using it as a tool for good, so that if I have access from all the opportunities I've been given because I'm a white male from Southern California, that I can take that and like financially contribute to acknowledge it more than just an Instagram post or a Facebook post, but actually put my money where my mouth is and where my heart is.
Now that's really good, because I think one thing that you said is that I'm going to utilize my privilege to be the change that needs to happen. And oftentimes I think people think they need to be able to relate in order to impact change. But I always think it's important that you're able to use your privilege to make the impact, not necessarily try to relate in order to make the changes that need to happen. So I think that's really great that you're able to acknowledge that. Like, I won't be able to relate, Right. I'll never be able to relate to someone going through that, but utilizing what you do have to help them. So that's really good. Justine, you want to tap in?
Sure. Yeah. I am, as we know, a principal. I teach 1% white children, right? 99% are children of color.
We've been zooming this up for a while, y'all.
yeah. So my dogs.
Heard a lot of words. Go ahead.
Come here. Okay, so when I first received the position, there was very vocal feedback. They wanted a Hispanic leader, rightfully so, in a predominantly Hispanic community. And I remember having real conversations with my parent population. And I was like, listen, you hold me to the highest level. And I know representation matters. And you're right. We don't see blonde hair, blue-eyed children in our school. I will bring more resources. I will work with you. We will hire more staff that are representative of our community. We will define all of this together. And honestly, within a very short period of time, within weeks, one of the parents came in and said, I'm sorry for judging you. I'm sorry for this. I said, don't be. I said, listen, you're allowed to feel however you want. And here's the goal. We're going to create thousands of Hispanic leaders right now in this school. And I hope that when we're passing the baton, we're creating bright futures. I understand the importance and the critical role that I have. And so we increased so much more access, just even by being multilingual and just revamping all of our parent engagement. we defined that together. The trust that we've built was so paramount. And the equity divide, the divide in access and the tech divide, the advocacy that we had to do. And I use my voice and my privilege. It is undeniable, right? But, just holding me to the highest level and the highest standard was something that I demanded them to do. And just recruiting also, like I said, I'm really proud of getting multilingual staff into the building, right? And over the years, hiring 24 staff members that speak, their language and increasing the arts and increasing all the funding and the partnerships. And those things have been very, very instrumental, very valued, but, it's definitely something where every single day it's intentional. Every decision that I make, and then I'll wrap up, of course, but, we evaluate the suspension rates, our discipline policy, all of these different things that who's being referred to for special education, and accountability on all aspects, and deciphering between the implicit bias, right? A lot of people are like, well, we love our kids. Okay, it's not about loving our kids. It's about some of the things that we say. Like, for example, Jose, you could do anything that you want to do. You could be anything that you want to be. You know what? When we read those, stories, and when I was reading the text from Dr. Bettina Love, it says that that's not necessarily true. And we have to teach them that you might be qualified for any position, but you may not get it because of the color of your skin or for other different things. And how do we navigate them and prepare them for that? So that's really what I do as a principal in my school now, as a white principal.
Yeah, that's huge, right? And I want to, before we get to the next question, Todd, I want you to tap in because I know you do a lot of work with your talks. Let's talk about racism and those type of things. And can you talk a little bit about that impact in regards of race, privilege, and class, and the work that you do, and how important is it? I always say, a lot of the anti-racism and a lot of the anti-blackness that we are trying to move into, it also needs, that dialogue also needs to happen in predominantly white spaces, right? And have that work be valued in predominantly white institutions. Can you talk a little bit about that in connection to, what you do with Let's Talk About Racism?
Yeah, it's funny when I reflect back because I have grown up and lived my entire life in the South. Grew up in the country, fit all the stereotypes that people see of Southern Texans. And I only knew racism as overt racism, in your face, when somebody uses the N-word, segregation of schools. Like, that's what I knew of racism because I never had to face anything else. And it wasn't until I started doing my own reflection and my own research and my own just understanding the biases that existed within my own thinking and life that the change began to shift for me. It wasn't something someone else said. I was teaching a very diverse set of kids, and I started feeling like, just like Justine said, it's not about, I just love all my students. It's so much deeper than that, because just like they come from different family makeups than I may have, or different socioeconomic backgrounds, or different races or religions even, all of that plays into different biases in the way we interact with each other. And when I really understood the effect that passing comments I made had on people, I never knew the amount of microaggressions that happened until I opened my eyes to it. And now I see it everywhere. It's kind of like when you buy a new car and you don't ever see anybody in your car, and then you buy a new car and you're like, dang, everybody has it. When you start like opening your eyes to what it means to have bias and privilege and micro and macroaggressions, you start seeing it everywhere, and you start thinking, how was I so blind to this before? And it's not an easy trip for us who are white. We want to say we love everybody. We want to use those antiquated phrases like I don't see color, and we don't see the damage that is doing until we spend the time not only research it, but broadening our circles. and making sure those who we are bringing into our daily lives are representative of a variety of backgrounds and cultures. And, you know, what I am so intrigued about by this conversation too, nationally, that we're having right now, is that what started as a predominantly conversation about anti-Black and racism against Black people has broadened wider and wider. And now a lot of the conversation is about Asian discrimination. And it's so wild being a white person and seeing what so many people of color are going through that I haven't had to face. I am not of the own. My personal belief is I will never truly understand what it means. I can't walk a mile in the shoes of others, but I can educate myself so that I can be better for the students I serve, for the adults I serve, that I can push people outside their comfort zone where they may not be ready to reflect completely yet, but they can begin to let some of those thoughts seep in and some of those understandings seep into who they may want to be. And that's how I feel we get better. It's not this shoving everybody out there and saying, all of you need to understand how terrible you are. What you're doing is so bad. Because there's a lot of hard-headed people. I'm one of them. Adam will tell you he's done a lot of work with me. I'm really hard-headed about a lot of stuff. But when you push a hard-headed person too much, they lock completely down, and you're not going to get anywhere with them. But I believe that you can't ignore the conversation either. So that's why within any circle that I put myself in, I try to make sure these conversations are coming up so that we can at least begin talking about it, even if it makes everybody a little bit uncomfortable at the start.
It's been so much that you guys all said. Like, I think we need so much more time to dig into this topic. So much good stuff that you said that deserves like a more extended conversation. But we do want to move on to our next question because we don't have all day, right? And so we appreciate having you guys here with us this morning. But to kind of go into the next question, we have like two more questions. Okay. About equity and equality. What that looks like, because that's an ongoing conversation, but it never gets old because it's such a diverse response when we hear it. And it's really important to have that conversation because that's how we were able to make the revolution and make the changes and make the shifts, acknowledging the difference between the two. Or is there a difference? So if we can maybe hear from Adam.
Sure, and I'm going to unmute myself. So I think this might be best answered with an example. And so a few years back when I was a principal at a school, I had a population of deaf students, and most of the deaf students were students of color as well. And so you start looking at your kind of privilege as well. And so equality would mean that these students would receive their assistance with via their IEP, so they have an interpreter and so on and so forth. So that the equality was there to access an education. However, it's not equity. Equity would mean that they would be given the opportunities, the resources, the guidance to be able to work at the same level as those students who do not have the disability. And so a few of the things that we were able to do were to put them in the spotlight. We gave them opportunities to be, and Todd knows a lot about this, heard me speak on this 1,000 times. I had a greeter program, an ambassador program, and so one of my star ambassadors was one of my deaf students. And so I tried my best to give equity opportunities to these students to have the same access to these really cool things. Because if you think about it, and Justine and Daniel and Todd and I, we are school leaders. Who always gets the opportunities? It's always the kids, the gifted kids, the kids that are accelerated. Who always misses out? It's your ESL kids, your second language kids, it's your special needs students. I really, really, really wanted to change that. And so it's not just about giving access to education and opportunities, it's about giving true opportunity that everyone has. So that was just my example from a personal experience. But I think I'm sure in the graphics that are out there with the equity and equality and the apple tree and the baseball field, all that stuff, you can, there's a million versions of it. But at the end of the day, it's about putting to say what Daniel said before, put your money where your mouth is and show some action. And so as school leaders, it's, the buck stops with us and we've got to show action.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to jump in? Adam or Justine?
Yeah, sure. So, I think it's funny because one of the, I guess I would say pushback, right, that I hear is when children are in distress and adults want a punishment. And you'll hear, right, oh, it's so unfair. They get to go to guidance, they get to play toys.
Yeah.
They get to tear apart a classroom, right, and be in class the next day. And these invisible issues. And one of the things I love reading what you have to say, Daniel, about just mental health and all of those. It's so misunderstood, and schools are so underfunded with the quality staff that they need to provide those services. It's so non-equitable, right? And if you're dealing with children in temporary housing, shelters, they are going to have different needs. And so to me, the equity piece, it's not equal, right? If I'm sitting at a dining room table and there's 6 chairs and one's wobbly, I'm not fixing the legs of all 6 chairs. And so we have to differentiate that. And sometimes people really, especially when you're leading, you'll see that bias or that misunderstanding come through. Well, it's so unfair. And I'm like, listen, we're not sending, we have to treat the root, and we have to build from the foundation. And sometimes that's on a school leader really to build the capacity of the staff and increase their toolbox and their understanding. And when you piece it together, it's really helpful. I'm just going to give an example with this. There was a child with a serious disability. This is actually, I was a leader, but I wasn't a principal. And the teacher comes in. A child has a stutter, a bunch of different concerns and issues, and they are just battling. And I say to her afterwards, why don't you start a journal with him, back and forth, right? She's like, that's not going to work. That's ridiculous. I'm like, yeah, but you're not listening to each other. I'm not doing that. Okay, fine. I'm like, okay, listen, I'm going to give you some tools, strategies, things like that. It seems like you're really butting heads. Fine. I made this little stationery. I put it in her mailbox, right? And I was like, oh, maybe she'll rip it up. Weeks later, she comes back. She goes, can I tell you what he writes to me? It is so powerful. It is so this, it is so that. And sometimes really as adults, we have to take ourselves into a level where we have to continuously feel like we're servicing whoever is in front of us. Any customer, any client, it does not matter. It is never, ever acceptable or our responsibility to say, we can't serve you because A, B, and C, because you have an emotional disturbance, because you're, a thorn in my side, or because of all those things. We don't have that right as public educators, to me. And so it's just really understanding the different needs and then the why, and not band-aiding them. Yeah. Really going into it deep, where the root is. And I think that has been a successful formula in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. And we listen, you guys. We're on day 2 of activation, right? And this has been going. It's been a phenomenal conference, right? And we want to make sure that we bring this home with everyone, that, and for you guys, like bringing in and tapping into this and talking about, like Adam said it, like these are courageous conversations that needs to be had on a national level that must lead to action, right? And I just want to give you guys an opportunity, just briefly, what is that lasting message you want to give to educators who are trying to spark a revolution, who's trying to do this anti-racist work at whatever institution that they're at? What is that lasting message that you will want to give to them as we close this out? And Todd, we'll start with you.
Okay. I think, for me, the conversation I've been having again and again over the last 12 months has just been, if there's anything I want educators to hear right now, it's that you are needed and wanted and are a necessary part of the solution. I think too often as educators, no matter what our role is, we feel tossed aside. We don't feel appreciated. We feel like the workload is too much and nobody recognizes how much we're pouring into this. But I hope that if you're hearing this message today, maybe it was just so you could hear somebody tell you that you are doing a fantastic job and your voice is needed and necessary. You deserve a seat at that table, and don't quit fighting, because there's always somebody watching, always somebody listening, and always somebody who might just need what only you can provide.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Adam.
Good.
I'm actually going to steal a quote from a lady who is now in the national spotlight, Stacey Abrams, and we know why now. But about 10 years ago, I got to hear Stacey Abrams speak at an event down in Atlanta, and it was when she was a representative, and she was the minority leader of the House of Representatives for Georgia. And she said, every day I go into work, and she said, basically, I know I'm going to lose. I mean, being in the minority of the House, it's rare that you're going to get a win, because of the majority is usually going to have the thing there. So she said, every day I go into work, and I have to have a mindset, because I would go nuts if I was going to just accept that I was going to lose every day. So she said, my mindset is to convince, not convert. And so there may be people out there that you're talking to, and you clearly know what they are saying is racist, wrong, and at the end of the day, you may not be able to convert them, as hard as it is to say that. But you can convince them that there are other thoughts, that there's another side, that there's another way to look at this. And so use that power, use what you know, be anti-racist, and do what you can to convince people that, there's other ways to look at this. There are no two sides to racism. And have those difficult conversations.
Awesome.
Good stuff.
Daniel.
I think my closing thought here is that, ego is the enemy. And if when the ego enters the room in any capacity, especially in education, it can confuse the matter, and it makes you posture from a defensive perspective, and you start to make excuses, and you don't take action because your ego is afraid that people will judge you, or they're going to talk about you, or they're going to no longer speak to you. And I know that that's something over the last year that I've really come to terms with. I mean, there's something magical about being horribly uncomfortable in your messaging when you know that you need from like my soul, I need to get that message out there because it's what I believe. But I also know that people are going to be at me and judging me and talking to me. But, I had to let that go, because I can hold on to, well, if I post, on election day, if I post Chivy sweatshirt, and I did, and I got just an onslaught of just the most troll comments, right? And I'm like, whatever, bring it. Like, this is what people live like every day. This is the kind of comments you get every single day when they're people of color. And here I am on the day I can choose to wear that sweatshirt, and I can choose to take it off, and then you know what I'm saying? I have that right. But for me, I just think when we're looking at creating like the anti-racist work, you have to be uncomfortable. If you're not uncomfortable, then you're not actually doing the work. Yeah. And that's how we grow. So, and I don't know it all, and I'm always learning, and I make mistakes, but there's a beauty in the discomfort. And when you let your ego make your decisions, it becomes the enemy, and you lose.
Awesome. Wow. Justine, take it home.
Yeah.
All right. So here's what I would say. Every moment matters. And sometimes I get in these spaces where I'm like, it's upstream. And I, want to save the world and this and that, right? And I think about this. Each moment is a child's world, right? Anything you say or do, they could remember that. And the ripple effect can be so, ingrained in who they are and what they choose to become and how they resolve a conflict. And I would say that every moment matters. And for each in your classroom, you can't save the world, but that is often a child's entire world. Do not be afraid. Do not be shy. If you see something, use your voice. But one thing, go the extra layer. Bring it to someone else's attention. Don't be nervous to do those things, because I never realized that type of ladder. I'm talking about when you see egregious things, when you see things that are dangerous, that could be lethal, that are serious damaging, you can use your voice, but go the extra step. Bring it to someone else's attention. Demand. Put it in writing. You know, when we're talking about important, critical matters. And then the other thing is, I really, that resonates with me, Daniel. You have to be very comfortable with sometimes what you say or do may be misunderstood, and you may upset a few things. And I'll just use an example, and it's a small example, but I think it might help. So we had a lot of spirited discussions about Dr. Seuss and things like that, right? Mm-hmm. And I wasn't certainly going to celebrate it. Had I did that in the past? Absolutely. And I thought to myself, as I bring this up, this might upset a few people. I was okay with that, because you know what is more important to me? That my children, when they realize, if they haven't already, the context and some of the racist things that we're studying and that are bringing to the forefront, they're not saying, you know what? My school celebrated that every year. Mm-hmm. I'm much more comfortable with maybe a handful of people, if that was the case, to be upset or to think, oh, I'm so tied to this, right? And this upsets me, and why? That could be ridiculous. I'm okay with that. I'm much more okay with that than my children thinking that I cultivated something that could have been damaging. And I wouldn't have felt that maybe 15 years ago, you know, I'm fresh out of college, you know, bouncing around. I would have let those insecurities and that would have diminished my action. So that's just advice that I would give to everybody, is to create those brave spaces and keep going. And every moment, matters to the children that you encounter.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, listen, you guys, we have been activated. we've been activated. Thank you guys, yes. Todd, Adam, Justine, Daniel. Stay being revolutionary. Stay being you. I am just honored, and I think we're both honored to not just call you guys on being activators and revolutionary educators, but to also call you guys friends. So continue the work that you guys do. We appreciate you guys for tapping in, and stay revolutionary, guys.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.